Hello, darkness seekers. Welcome back to Mr. Shadow's stories, where the line between reality and nightmare blurs with every tale I tell. I'm your host, wandering through the forgotten corners of the ordinary world, where evil lurks in the most unexpected places. Tonight, I invite you to step into the fluorescent-lit hallways of emptiness, where the hum of computers never truly sleeps and the shadows grow longer after the sun goes down. You see, office buildings, those mundane temples of paperwork and productivity, transform into something entirely different when the clock strikes midnight and the last employee locks the door behind them. But what happens when you're not the last one there? What happens when you stay behind and discover you're not alone? Extinguish the lights, silence your phone, and whatever you do, don't look behind you. These are 5 creepy true office building after-hours encounters. Let the nightmares begin. Story 1: The Woman in the Conference Room. Marcus was a dedicated IT specialist at a mid-sized marketing firm in downtown Seattle. His job often required him to work late into the night, updating systems and running security patches when network traffic was lowest. He'd grown accustomed to the eerie silence that descended upon the 12th floor after 7 p.m., when the last of the sales team would finally call it a day. It was a Thursday in October when Marcus experienced something that would forever change how he viewed his workplace. He'd arrived at the office around 9 p.m., armed with energy drinks and a lengthy checklist of server maintenance tasks. The building was predictably empty, or so he thought. Around 11:30, Marcus needed to use the conference room on the opposite side of the floor to test the video conferencing equipment. The executive meeting room, they called it, a large space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a massive oak table, and 18 leather chairs that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. As he approached the frosted glass doors, he noticed something unusual. The lights were on. This was strange because the motion sensors should have shut them off hours ago if no one was present. Marcus figured maybe the sensors were malfunctioning. After all, that's why he was there. He pushed open the door and froze. A woman sat at the far end of the conference table, her back to him, perfectly still. She wore what appeared to be an outdated business suit, something from the 80s, with pronounced shoulder pads. Her hair was styled in a rigid, formal manner that seemed equally out of time. "Hello?" Marcus called, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize anyone was still here. I'm with IT, just need to check the equipment." The woman didn't respond. She didn't even move. Marcus felt his skin prickle. Something was deeply wrong. He took a cautious step forward. "Miss, are you okay?" Still nothing, no movement whatsoever, not even the slight rise and fall of breathing. Summoning his courage, Marcus walked around the table to face her. As he rounded the corner, his blood turned to ice. There was no one there. The chair sat empty, but it was still warm. Marcus stumbled backward, his rational mind trying to process what he'd just experienced. He'd seen her. He was absolutely certain. The image was burned into his memory. The dark suit, the rigid hair, the unnatural stillness.
Marcus quickly completed his work in the conference room, his hands shaking the entire time, and practically ran back to the server room. As he was packing up his equipment around 1 a.m., he decided to do something he'd never done before: check the building's security camera footage. The marketing firm didn't have access to the main security feeds, but they had their own cameras in common areas, including the executive conference room. What Marcus saw made his hands go numb. The footage clearly showed him entering the conference room at 11:32 p.m. It showed him stopping in the doorway, appearing to look at something. It showed him calling out, walking around the table, then stumbling backward. But the woman, she wasn't there. The chair at the end of the table remained empty the entire time. Marcus sat in stunned silence, watching the footage loop again and again. He could see himself reacting to her, speaking to her, walking toward her, but the camera captured no one else in that room. The next morning, shaken and sleep-deprived, Marcus mentioned the incident to Patricia, one of the older receptionists who'd worked in the building for over 20 years. Her face went pale. "You saw her," Patricia whispered, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. "The woman in the outdated suit." Marcus felt his stomach drop. You know about this?" Patricia nodded slowly. "A woman named Catherine Brennan worked for the law firm that occupied this floor in 1987. She was a senior partner, brilliant, driven, and absolutely devoted to her work. One night, she was working late on a major case, alone in that very conference room. Witnesses said she left the building around midnight, but her car was found in the parking garage 3 days later. She'd driven it into a concrete pillar at high speed. Suicide, they ruled it. But why would she knows nothing," Patricia continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But maintenance workers, security guards, people working late, they've been seeing her for decades, always in that conference room, always with her back turned, always in that same suit she wore the night she died. And Marcus, she always disappears the moment someone tries to face her. It's like she's forever trapped in that last meeting, forever working late, unable to leave." Marcus never worked late in that building again. He requested a transfer to day shifts only and eventually left the company altogether. But sometimes late at night, he still wonders about Catherine Brennan, about what drove her to that final desperate act, and whether her spirit will ever find the peace to finally clock out for the last time.
Story 2: The Elevator to Nowhere. Jennifer was a financial analyst who worked on the 23rd floor of a prestigious office tower in Chicago. The building was a landmark, 47 stories of gleaming glass and steel, home to law firms, accounting agencies, and corporate headquarters. One evening in March, Jennifer was working late to finalize a quarterly report due the next morning. It was approaching 10 p.m. when she finally saved her work, packed her laptop, and headed for the elevator bank. The elevator had 6 elevators, 3 on each side of the central corridor. Jennifer pressed the down button and waited, staring at her phone, exhausted and ready to go home. The middle elevator on the left side chimed and opened. Jennifer stepped inside without looking up, pressed the lobby button, and leaned against the back wall as the doors slid shut. The elevator descended smoothly. Jennifer watched the floor numbers decrease on the digital display above the door. 22, 21, 20, 19. Then something strange happened. After passing the 19th floor, the next number that appeared was 13B. Jennifer's brow furrowed.
There was no 13th floor in the building. It had been skipped in the numbering due to superstition, a common practice in older structures. And she'd certainly never heard of any B designation. Before she could process this oddity, the elevator stopped and the doors opened. What Jennifer saw made no sense whatsoever. The corridor beyond was nothing like the modern, well-lit hallways of her building. Instead, she found herself looking at a dimly lit space with yellowed walls, ancient fluorescent fixtures that flickered and buzzed, and carpeting that might have been orange once but had faded to a sickly brown. The air that wafted into the elevator was musty and cold, carrying the scent of mildew and something else, something chemical and unpleasant. "What the hell?" whispered Jennifer, pressing herself against the back of the elevator. The corridor was completely silent, except for that incessant buzzing of the damaged lights. Office doors lined both sides, each with frosted glass panels and old-fashioned nameplates, but from where Jennifer stood, she couldn't read any of the names. Every instinct screamed at her to press the door close button, but morbid curiosity held her frozen. This floor shouldn't exist. It couldn't exist. And yet here it was, impossibly real. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Someone was walking down the corridor from the left. The steps were slow, deliberate, and accompanied by a strange dragging sound, as if the person was pulling something heavy behind them. Jennifer frantically jabbed the door close button. Nothing happened. She pressed it again and again, panic rising in her throat. The footsteps grew closer. The dragging sound became more pronounced. "Close! Close! Close!" she hissed, slamming her palm against the button panel. Just as a shadow began to fall across the elevator threshold, a tall, impossibly thin shadow that seemed to bend and stretch in ways that defied the light source, the doors finally began to slide shut. Jennifer caught the briefest glimpse of what was approaching, a figure in what might have once been a business suit, now tattered and stained, but it was the face that would haunt her nightmares, or rather, the absence of one. Where features should have been, there was only smooth, pale skin, like a mannequin that had never been finished. The doors sealed shut just as the figure reached them. Jennifer heard a sound like fingernails scraping against the metal exterior, a sound that continued even as the elevator lurched and began moving again. The indicator resumed its normal sequence, 18, 17, 16. By the time Jennifer reached the lobby, she was trembling so violently she could barely walk. The night security guard, an older man named Raymond, looked up from his desk with concern. "Mess, you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." Jennifer tried to explain what happened, her words tumbling out in a confused rush. Raymond's expression grew increasingly serious as she spoke. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Come with me." He led her to his office behind the security desk and pulled out an old, worn binder from a locked drawer. Inside were newspaper clippings, printed emails, and handwritten notes. "You're not the first," Raymond said simply. "That elevator, the middle one on the left, it's done this before. Always late at night, always when someone's alone, and it's always the same floor, 13B. "But there is no 13th floor," Jennifer protested. "Not anymore," Raymond agreed, "but there used to be. Back in 1959, when this building was first constructed, there was a 13th floor. It housed a pharmaceutical research company called Wexler Biosolutions. They were doing experimental work, stuff that wouldn't be legal today." He showed her a yellowed newspaper clipping dated October 22, 1962. The headline read, "Mysterious Illness Strikes Wexler Bio Employees. Company Closes Overnight." 37 people worked on that floor, Raymond continued. Over the course of 6 months, 17 of them developed a strange wasting disease. They became thin, pale, their features seemed to blur, and then they'd disappear, just wouldn't show up for work one day. The company closed suddenly, sealed off the entire floor, and within a year, the building owners had it demolished, literally removed the entire floor from the structure and renumbered everything. But somehow, some way, it's still there. Not physically maybe, but in whatever space exists between the floors. Jennifer never took that middle elevator again. In fact, she started using the stairs exclusively, even if it meant climbing 23 floors. Other employees thought she was crazy, obsessed with fitness. But Jennifer knew better. She knew that some floors should stay forgotten, and some doors should never open. And late at night, when the building is quiet and empty, that elevator still runs its impossible route, stopping at a floor that doesn't exist, where faceless figures in tattered suits walk endless corridors, forever trapped in their forgotten nightmare.
Story 3. The Voice on the Intercom. Daniel worked as a night custodian for a large corporate office complex in Houston, Texas. The building was relatively new, only about 5 years old, and housed various tech companies and startups. His shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and he'd been doing the job for nearly 2 years without incident. The work was simple, if tedious: empty trash bins, vacuum floors, clean bathrooms, and maintain the common areas. Daniel actually enjoyed the solitude. He'd plug in his earbuds, listen to podcasts, and work methodically through his rounds. But one night in late November, something happened that made Daniel question everything he thought he knew about the building. It started around 2 a.m. Daniel was on the 9th floor, cleaning the break room, when the intercom suddenly crackled to life. This was unusual because the intercom system was only supposed to be active during business hours, operated from the main reception desk on the ground floor. After hours, it was completely shut down. At first, there was only static. Daniel removed his earbuds and listened. The crackling continued for about 30 seconds, then stopped as abruptly as it had started. "Weird," Daniel muttered, assuming it was some kind of electrical glitch. He returned to his work. 10 minutes later, it happened again, but this time there was something behind the static, a voice, faint and distorted, trying to speak. "Hello? Is anyone there?" Daniel froze, mop in hand. The voice was male, weak, and filled with what sounded like pain or fear. "Hello?" Daniel called out, looking at the intercom speaker mounted on the wall. "Is someone there? This is building maintenance." Static answered him, followed by silence. Daniel felt uneasy, but tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prank, or perhaps someone from the security company was testing the system. He pulled out his phone and called the main security desk. "Hey, this is Daniel on 9. Are you guys doing something with the intercom?" "Negative," the guard replied. "System's been offline all night. Why?" I thought I heard something. Never mind, must be my imagination." But it wasn't his imagination. As he moved to the 10th floor, the intercom activated again, this time with much greater clarity. "Please, please help me. I'm trapped." The voice was desperate now, almost sobbing. "Where are you? I can't help you if I don't know where you are." "10th floor, server room. Please, it's so cold, can't breathe." Daniel knew exactly where the server room was, a secured space at the end of the east corridor that required a special key card he didn't have. Only IT personnel could access it.
He ran to the server room door and found it locked, as expected. The small window in the door revealed only darkness. The server's indicator lights that should have been glowing were all dark. "Hello? Can you hear me?" Daniel shouted, banging on the door. The intercom crackled again, but now the voice was right next to him, coming from the speaker mounted just above the server room door. "Help me." Then Daniel heard something that made his blood run cold. Banging. Someone was pounding on the other side of the door, matching his own frantic knocks. He called security immediately. "I need someone on 10 right now. I think someone is trapped in the server room." 2 security guards arrived within minutes, along with the building's night manager, who had a master key card. They unlocked the server room door and threw it open. The room was empty, completely, utterly empty. The servers hummed quietly, their lights blinking normally. The temperature was cool but perfectly regulated. There was no one there, no sign that anyone had been there. "I heard him," Daniel insisted. "He was calling for help. He was banging on the door." The guards searched every corner of the room, checked behind server racks, and even opened the false ceiling panels. Nothing. The night manager, a no-nonsense woman named Carol, checked the security footage. The cameras covering the 10th floor corridor showed Daniel approaching the server room, calling out and banging on the door. They showed the guards and Carol arriving, but they showed no one else. No one entering or leaving the server room. No one inside. "Look," one of the guards said, clearly thinking Daniel was either pranking them or losing his mind. "There's nobody here. Maybe you need to take a break, get some air." Frustrated and frightened, Daniel was about to argue when Carol held up her hand. "Wait," she said, her face pale as she stared at the computer screen. "Play that back, the audio." The guard rewound the footage. They all listened. There, clear as day on the security recording, the voice, "Help me," and then, unmistakably, the sound of someone banging on the server room door from the inside. "That's not possible," one of them whispered. Carol's hands were shaking as she pulled up building records on her tablet. She searched for several minutes, her face growing increasingly disturbed. "Oh my God," she finally said. "Oh my God." She turned the tablet around to show them an internal incident report from 3 years ago, marked confidential, do not distribute. The report detailed the death of an IT contractor named Marcus Reeves, who had been working alone in the 10th floor server room during a weekend maintenance shift. He'd apparently suffered a severe allergic reaction to something. The report wasn't specific, and he'd tried to call for help using the intercom system. But there had been a power outage that night, affecting the entire building's communication systems. His calls for help went unheard. He'd been trapped in the server room, unable to open the electronically locked door from the inside due to the power failure. By the time someone found him on Monday morning, he'd been dead for over 32 hours. The report had been buried, the incident hushed up to avoid lawsuits and bad publicity. Marcus's family had been quietly compensated. The building management had upgraded the emergency systems to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. But apparently, Marcus was still there, still trapped, still calling for help through the very system that had failed him. Daniel quit that night. He walked out of the building at 2:45 a.m. and never returned, not even to pick up his final paycheck. The building management mailed it to him. He later heard from a former colleague that the intercom incidents continued, always around 2 a.m., always on the 10th floor, always the same desperate voice calling out from a room where no one could possibly be. Some emergencies, it seems, echo through time itself, playing over and over again a recording of tragedy that no amount of upgraded systems can erase.
Story 4: The Meeting That Never Ended.
Sarah was a project manager at an architectural firm located on the 15th floor of a historic office building in Boston. The building dated back to the 1920s and retained much of its original character: ornate molding, high ceilings, and a sense of old-world elegance that newer structures lacked. One Wednesday evening in January, Sarah stayed late to prepare for a client presentation scheduled for the following morning. Around 8 p.m., she realized she'd left important blueprints in the fourth-floor conference room where her team had met earlier that day. The fourth floor was technically owned by a different company, a financial consulting firm, but the building's tenants occasionally shared conference space for large meetings. Sarah had a general access card that would get her through the stairwell doors, so she headed down to retrieve her materials. The fourth floor was dark and silent when she arrived. Sarah used her flashlight to navigate the hallways, not wanting to bother turning on all the lights for such a quick errand. The conference room was at the far end of the corridor, past rows of cubicles and closed office doors. As she approached, she noticed something odd. Light was visible through the frosted glass walls of the conference room. Sarah slowed her pace. Had someone else stayed late? The financial firm usually clears out by 6 p.m. She reached the conference room and peered through a clear section of the glass. What she saw made absolutely no sense. The room was full of people, at least a dozen men and women, all dressed in business attire. They sat around the large table, papers and coffee cups in front of them, engaged in what appeared to be an intense meeting. One man stood at the head of the table, gesturing emphatically at a presentation board covered in charts and graphs. Sarah was confused. Why would they be having a meeting at 8 p.m. in complete darkness outside the room? And why hadn't she heard any sound? The conference room wasn't soundproof. She knocked gently on the glass door. No one looked up. No one reacted at all. They continued their meeting as if she didn't exist. Sarah knocked harder, assuming they simply hadn't heard her. Still nothing. The standing man continued his presentation, pointing at different parts of the chart. A woman at the table nodded and made notes on a legal pad. Another man sipped his coffee. Feeling increasingly disturbed, Sarah tried the door handle. It was unlocked. She pushed the door open and stepped inside, ready to apologize for the interruption and quickly grab her blueprints. "Excuse me, I'm sorry to—" The words died in her throat. The room was empty. Completely, impossibly empty. No people, no papers, no coffee cups. The presentation board was blank. The lights were off. But Sarah could still see them. They were still there, still conducting that endless meeting, but now they seemed translucent, like projections or holograms. She could see through them to the chairs and walls beyond. And now, finally, they noticed her. As one, every person in the room turned to look at her. Their faces were wrong, features slightly blurred, eyes just a bit too large, mouths that didn't quite move naturally when they spoke. The man who'd been presenting smiled, but it was a terrible smile, too wide, showing too many teeth. "Ah," he said, his voice echoing strangely. "We've been waiting for you. Please, take a seat. We have so much to discuss." The woman who'd been taking notes gestured to an empty chair, the only empty chair at the table. "You're late," she said in a voice like rustling paper. "The meeting started hours ago, days ago, years ago." Sarah stumbled backward, terror flooding her system. The translucent figures began to stand, moving toward her with jerky, unnatural movements. "Don't go," another voice pleaded. "Stay. Join us. We have so much work to do.
so many quarterly reports, so many projections, so many meetings, forever and ever and ever. Sarah turned and ran. She sprinted down the dark hallway, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her phone dropping from her shaken hands. Behind her, she could hear them following, the sound of dress shoes on carpet, the rustling of papers, the murmur of corporate jargon spoken in those horrible, echoing voices. She hit the stairwell door at full speed, nearly falling down the stairs in her panic to escape. She didn't stop running until she reached her own floor, burst through the door, and locked herself in her personal office. Sarah sat huddled under her desk, trembling, for nearly an hour before she felt safe enough to leave the building. She left through the main entrance, not stopping to retrieve her coat or her phone or anything else. She just ran to her car and drove home, breaking several traffic laws in her haste to put distance between her and that building. The next morning, shaken but trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy, Sarah asked her boss about the financial firm on the 4th floor. Her boss gave her a strange look. "There hasn't been a financial firm on the 4th floor for over 30 years, Sarah. That entire floor has been empty since the late 80s. Why do you ask?" Sarah felt the world tilt. But we had our meeting there yesterday. I was just there." "No, Sarah, your meeting was in the 14th floor conference room. I was there, remember? We've never used the 4th floor. It's been vacant since Rothman Financial went under in 1987. Later, driven by a morbid need to understand, Sarah researched Rothman Financial. What she discovered chilled her to the bone. In December 1987, during a late-night emergency meeting called to discuss the firm's imminent bankruptcy, 12 executives and employees had been trapped in the 4th floor conference room when a fire broke out in the building. A faulty space heater had ignited some papers, and the fire spread rapidly through the old building's wooden infrastructure. The conference room door had jammed, a problem with the vintage lock mechanism. The windows were sealed shut as part of the building's climate control system. By the time firefighters reached them, all 12 people had died of smoke inhalation. They died during a meeting that never got to adjourn, discussing financial projections they'd never get to implement, trapped in a room that became their tomb. And apparently, they were still there, still conducting that endless meeting, waiting for others to join them in their eternal corporate purgatory. Sarah transferred to a different office location within the month, but sometimes late at night, she still dreams of that conference room, of translucent figures gesturing at phantom charts, sipping invisible coffee, and always looking for new attendees to fill that one empty chair.
Story 5. The Printer That Never Stops. Kevin was a graphic designer working for an advertising agency on the 8th floor of a mid-rise building in Portland, Oregon. He was known among his colleagues for his dedication, often staying late to perfect his designs, tweaking colors and layouts until everything was absolutely perfect. It was during one of these late-night sessions in February that Kevin encountered something that would make him reconsider his workaholic tendencies. Around midnight, Kevin was putting the final touches on a campaign for a major client when he heard it, the sound of a printer running. This wasn't particularly unusual. The agency had several large-format printers that sometimes ran scheduled jobs at night. But this sounded like it was coming from the small copy room just down the hall from Kevin's workspace, and that printer shouldn't have been running at all. Curious, Kevin walked to the copy room and pushed open the door. The old multifunction printer, a massive device that had been slated for replacement for months, was indeed running. Pages sliding into the output tray one after another, the machine whirring and clicking with mechanical rhythm.
Kevin approached and picked up one of the printed pages. His blood went cold. The page was filled with text, single-spaced, no margins, but it wasn't a document or a report. It was a conversation, a chat log or transcript of some kind. He read the first few lines. "I don't want to stay late again. Please, I just want to go home. He's making me stay. He says the project isn't done. It's never done. I'm so tired. I just want to leave." Kevin looked at the printer, which continued churning out pages. He picked up another one. "Day 47, still here, still working. Haven't seen daylight in so long. The others left, said they'd send help. No one came. He says we have deadlines, have to meet the deadlines. Can't stop working, can't stop, can't." More pages emerged, each filled with increasingly disturbing messages. "The coffee tastes like dust. The fluorescent lights are burning into my brain. My fingers are bleeding from typing, but the project must be finished. He's watching, always watching, making sure we work, making sure we never leave." Kevin frantically pressed buttons on the printer, trying to stop the job. Nothing worked. The printer continued its relentless output, pages piling up in the tray and spilling onto the floor. He read another page. "I tried to leave. The doors are locked. The elevators don't come. The windows won't break. There's only work, only the project, only his voice saying, 'Not good enough,' forever and ever and ever and ever." Kevin's hands were shaking now. He looked at the printer's display screen, trying to find the source of the print job. The screen showed, "Printing from Workstation 3B, user Jennifer Hastings, document help.doch." But Workstation 3B didn't exist. The agency only had workstations numbered 1A through 2H, and Kevin had never heard of any employee named Jennifer Hastings. More pages printed. "If you're reading this, you're still there too, still in the building after hours, still working when you should have gone home. Be careful. He finds the dedicated ones, the ones who stay late, the ones who care too much about their work. He makes them stay forever, like me, like us, like you will be." Kevin stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the pile of papers that had accumulated on the floor. The printer showed no signs of stopping. He ran back to his desk, grabbed his jacket and bag, not even bothering to save his work or shut down his computer. He just needed to leave immediately. As he rushed toward the elevator, Kevin passed the office of his department head, Mr. Carlson. Through the frosted glass door, he could see that a light was on. This was strange. Mr. Carlson never stayed late. He was famously strict about work-life balance, always leaving promptly at 5 p.m. Against his better judgment, Kevin approached the door. Through the frosted glass, he could see a figure sitting at the desk, hunched over the computer. Kevin knocked softly. "Mr. Carlson, sir, are you all right?" The figure didn't move, didn't respond, just continued staring at the computer screen, hands on the keyboard. Kevin opened the door. The smell hit him first, something musty and wrong, like old paper and decay. The office was ice cold, despite the building's heating system running. The figure at the desk slowly turned to face him. It was Mr. Carlson, but something was horribly wrong. His skin had a grayish tint, his eyes were sunken and dark, and his suit looked like it hadn't been changed in weeks. When he spoke, his voice sounded distant and hollow. "Kevin, good, you're still here. I need those designs by morning. The client meeting is... He trailed off, looking confused. "When is the client meeting, Kevin?" "Sir, I think you should go home. You don't look well." Mr. Carlson's head tilted at an unnatural angle. Home? I can't go home. Too much work. Always too much work. Have to meet the deadlines. Have to please the clients. Have to. Kevin backed away slowly. I'm leaving now, Mr. Carlson. I think you should too. No. The word came out as a sharp bark. Mr. Carlson stood up, and Kevin realized with horror that his feet weren't quite touching the ground. You can't leave. The work isn't done. It's never done. Don't you understand? We have to work. We have to stay. Forever. Kevin ran. He ran faster than he'd ever run in his life, slamming through the stairwell door and taking the stairs 3 at a time. Behind him, he heard Mr. Carlson's voice echoing through the hallway. Come back. The project needs you. The company needs you. Don't leave us. Don't leave. Kevin burst out of the building into the cold February night, gasping for air, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might explode. He never went back. He quit via email the next morning, citing a family emergency. The agency tried to contact him multiple times about projects he'd left unfinished, but Kevin never responded. Months later, after moving to a different city and starting fresh at a new company, Kevin did some research. He discovered that a woman named Jennifer Hastings indeed worked for an advertising agency in that building, but it was back in 1993, nearly 30 years ago. Jennifer had been a dedicated account manager, known for working excessive hours. One week in November 1993, she'd been pushing to complete a major campaign. According to old news reports, Jennifer had told friends she was working 18 to 20-hour days, sleeping at her desk, rarely leaving the office. One Monday morning, security found her dead at her workstation. Heart attack, the medical examiner ruled, brought on by extreme exhaustion and stress. She'd been dead for nearly 3 days before anyone noticed, working alone in the office over the weekend, dying at her desk in the early hours of Sunday morning. The article mentioned that her department head at the time, a man named Harold Carlson, had taken her death very hard. He'd blamed himself for pushing his team too hard, for fostering a culture of overwork. 6 months later, Harold Carlson died by suicide in his office, unable to cope with the guilt. Kevin never worked late again. He leaves his office every day at exactly 5 p.m., no exceptions. His current bosses think he lacks ambition, that he doesn't care enough about his career. But Kevin knows better. He knows that some deadlines aren't worth meeting, some projects aren't worth finishing, and some offices hold on to their workers long before they should have been allowed to leave. And sometimes, late at night, Kevin still wakes up to the phantom sound of a printer running, churning out page after page of desperate pleas from people who stayed too late and discovered that in some offices, overtime can last forever.
5 true stories. 5 ordinary office buildings. 5 encounters with the unexplainable. These accounts remind us that the supernatural doesn't only lurk in abandoned asylums or ancient cemeteries. Sometimes horror wears a suit and tie. Sometimes it hides in the fluorescent-lit corridors of corporate America, waiting for the last worker to leave, or for the dedicated one who stays behind. The next time you find yourself alone in an office building after hours, when the cleaning crew has gone home, when the security guard is making rounds on another floor, when you're the last one burning the midnight oil, remember these stories. Listen carefully to the sounds around you. Pay attention to the lights that shouldn't be on, the elevators that stop at floors that don't exist, the voices on intercom systems that have been turned off. Because you might not be as alone as you think. This has been Mr. Shadow's Stories. I'm your host, your guide through the darkness that exists just beyond the ordinary. If these tales have sent shivers down your spine, if they've made you look twice at your own office building, then subscribe to this channel. Ring that notification bell. Every week, I bring you more true horror stories from the shadows of the everyday world. Share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you encountered something unexplainable in your workplace? Have you stayed late only to discover you weren't alone? Tell me your story. I'm always listening. Until next time, remember, some work should never be finished. Some meetings should never start. And some offices are best left empty after dark. Stay safe out there, darkness seekers, and whatever you do, don't stay late.